shift forks, and lower housing inspection. There is an interlock cutout on this shaft right here. That prevents the outer shaft and fork from moving. If I rotate the shaft and slide it up so the cutout aligns with the interlock pin, which is in the interlock housing, the outer shaft will now slide. Now you can see the interlock cutout in the second shaft. There are two small bearings in the housing that function as an interlock pin. They work with the interlock cutouts on the shaft to prevent or allow a particular shaft to move. The interlock pin sits in the housing between the two shafts. Each shaft has an interlock cutout. When the upper shaft is moved to the left, the interlock pin is wedged into the lower shaft cutout, which prevents it from moving. If the upper shaft is moved back into the neutral position, the lower shaft can now move. The movement of the lower shaft forces the interlock pin into the upper shaft cutout, which prevents it from moving. This prevents the driver from moving the transmission into two gears at the same time, which will lock up the transmission. The shift forks need to be inspected. Inspecting the surface pads where the shift forks contact the synchronizer sleeve. Inspect the front and back surface area, looking for grooves and signs of wear. Sometimes there is a third pad located in the middle of the fork that should not be overlooked. I use my thumbnail and a small screwdriver across the surface to feel for imperfections. In the lower housing, the differential will pull out. I now have access to overhaul the differential. The ring gear, case, spider gears, and bearings can now be disassembled, inspected, and replaced as needed. This gear is for the speedometer. There is an adjustment for the differential case bearings in the housing. There is a shim located under this bearing race. The shim applies a slight preload on the bearings. The case bearing preload should always be checked and adjusted during an overhaul. This is an output shaft roller bearing that needs inspection or replacement on an overhaul. The second roller bearing in the housing is for the input shaft. Inspecting the input shaft bearing surface can provide a clue as to the condition of the roller bearing. A special blind hole puller is needed to remove these bearings and bearing races. Because this is a training transaxle, I will not be replacing the bearings or taking apart or adjusting the differential. The magnet in the housing helps to keep any metal particles from circulating in the oil, which can damage the transaxle. The speedometer-driven gear and sensor has not been removed yet, so we can see the gear in the housing. On the other side, we can see the electrical connections for the speedometer sensor.